Hello, this is Katie. Welcome back to my channel. For Watercolor Wednesday, we're going to be watercoloring this plush cat that I got for my cat because it matches her. I'm going to be using my new little flowery shaped palette that I got from Amazon, and then also the White Knights Russian paints that I also got from Amazon. I got her the pillow because I thought she would lay on it. I also got my boy cat a white cat pillow. So far they have not laid on them, but I still have hope. We are going to sketch first. I'm just using a sketching pencil that I got from Michael's. And I'll also be using a kneaded eraser, which is just easier on the paper than a normal eraser. So generally what we're going to do, and what most watercolor artists do when they're trying to paint a picture or a landscape or anything with detail, is they sketch it out and then pick most of that pencil up with a kneaded eraser. And then what you have left is basically the white, or not white, the very light outlines of pencil that you can still see as your guide for where to paint. And so that is what I'll be doing. You'll see how I go and pick up most of the pencil very quickly in just a little bit. It's kind of a helpful tip. And then here I'm just kind of fixing the lines there, and then I'm going to draw in the ears. I'm going to make the right one how I want it. It just needs to be a little more round on the top. And then I'm just going to try and make the left one to match it. So I'm just kind of pinpointing where the right one, starts and ends, so I can do the same for the left. And I was happy with the first go, but for the orange spot, it is a little larger on the plush cat, so I'm going to go ahead and make that circle a little bit bigger. And we are going to paint the ear and the spot, even though they're both that orangey brown, separately to kind of show the seam. And then I'm just drawing in the super simple face that is stitched on the cat, and I'm trying to line up the eyes the same, and then it's just got two whiskers on each side. So then I'm going to set the pillow aside and take the kneaded eraser and kind of roll it into a log, and then all you have to do is just roll it across your paper. And if it gets too long, just fold it in half and do it again. And then any areas that aren't coming up enough, you can just kind of pinpoint and grab. So I am just lightening all of my pencil lines. And I'm not worrying too much in the areas that I know are going to be that like really dark gray on the cat. And also the eyes and the whiskers are going to be essentially black. It's not quite black. The first thing that I'm going to do, though, I realize before I get started, is I have to mix up some paint. I'm going to be using the kind of orangey brown. I'm going to add in a dab of orange, and then also that dark gray, that second to last. And then the last one is black, which I'll use for the eyes and the whiskers. And I'll also be diluting that hot pink up there quite a bit, because I don't need it so hot. It's more of like just a cutesy pink, not hot pink. So I'm going to be diluting that down. And the thing you want to do, or make sure to do, before you get started on any painting, no matter what size it is make sure you have enough paint. So you want to make sure to add enough pigment from the pan as well as water. And one of those examples is that for the body of the cat, on the pillow is kind of like a really, really light cream. It's not white like my paper, so I do want to give it some tint. I want to paint it. And so there is a color up at the top. It's kind of the light brown to the left of that very bright orange. That color is what I'm going to be grabbing, I think, off screen. I'm not sure if I have it in screen when I'm getting it. I'm going to be putting in the middle circle of my palette. And I'm going to dilute it down quite a bit to just become kind of like a very, very light cream wash. But I want to add also enough water because the body of the cat that I'm going to be covering is quite large. And you don't want to run, in this case, it's a very light color. It probably wouldn't have mattered so much. But there are two reasons you want to prep enough paint beforehand. And the first one is that you want to have enough to complete your painting. Not also have enough so that, because watercolor is going to dry as you're doing it, and you don't want it to dry while you're trying to mix more paint because you didn't have enough. And two, you're going to make a lot of one shade. You don't want to, while your paint is drying, not only have to come up with more paint because you ran out, but trying to come up with that same exact shade again, especially if you mixed colors, or even if it's just one color. If you don't remember how much you diluted it, you can get pretty close, but it won't be exact. So if you just make up enough paint in your palette that you know you're going to need before you get started, then you won't have to worry about any of that. So here I'm mixing it. I think I even got a splotch of black in there, but I just kept mixing and lightened it, and it worked out fine. So I'm mixing it to the shade I want, but adding lots and lots of water because I want to make sure I have enough. And I ran a clean wash of water over the body of the cat. So basically just the circle nugget portion, and I left the ears alone for now. And then I'm going to use my wide brush again to paint the body of the cat, that very light wash of, I'd say creamy white or off-white, but it's essentially a very, very, very light brown. And so I'm just following the wash of water. So putting down a clean wash of water first kind of also helps you stay in the lines. This was an accident, but it actually worked out. I'll explain that in a minute. It helps you follow the lines when you are laying down your color. And it also gives it that watercolor look. So it's essentially doing wet on wet versus wet on dry paper. Now where I accidentally grabbed the black on my brush is actually in the bottom right where the dark gray spot is going to be. It is it's the blackish blue, whereas I'm going to be using gray, but I end up covering it up enough, so you'll see. So I got very lucky where I swiped my large brush that had that black on it, because it's just going to be in the really dark gray spot anyway. So here I'm just doing a clean wash of water, just plain water, and then we'll be filling it in with the dark gray. Here I'm trying to use my brush to pick out a hair, which is an endless fight and very annoying to deal with while painting. So I'm putting down our dark gray over the whole ear, and I'll be going over these sections at least a couple times each. And I will be using a heat gun to dry them in between, because I don't want to wait for them to fully air dry before I go back. And while they're dry, they're still wet enough or damp enough in the paper to kind of give me something to follow along. So you can still see my mistake line through this dark gray, but I will be adding another layer to kind of wash that out as well. So I got really lucky where that ended up. So I'm just going to put down some clean water onto our brownish orange spot. I think it worked out perfect just adding that little touch of orange color into the well with the brown. Another hair I'm trying to get out of the paper. I think the hairs hide in my brush and then they come out as well. They're also flying through the air, I'm sure, but they end up in my brush, and then those end up mixed in with my paint. So I am just drying the sections that I did. I am going to end up with a dark, kind of a dark orange ridge here because that's where the paint settled, but that's fine. I'm going to go over this section again with more paint. So then because that's dry, I'm going to go ahead and lay down some clean water on my left ear. And I had mentioned before, I'm doing these two orange sections separately because the pillow cat does have a seam. So you can see the difference between the ear and the spot, obviously. I didn't want to just do it as one blob, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of distinguishing them from each other just by how I'm painting, even if I go back over them. I think I end up drying that orange ear before I go over it again. And then I'm going to go back over my dark gray sections again while that one air dries a little bit. I'm still going to use my heat gun to fully dry it. But we'll fill these in some more, and then I think I can officially cover my black splotch mistake that I made earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and dry again, and then I believe I just do the ear one more time, and then dry that. And that one, I do this ear again fully because I did miss a line on the left, but if I had only filled in that line, the color would have looked off. There would have been a big variance between the color that was already down and what I was using to fix it, so I just decided to cover the whole ear again. And then this one, again separate, so we can still kind of see that seam between the two oranges, which isn't the pencil at this point, it is the orange paint. So that worked out. You can't really see too much pencil left here. I'm going to be using my number 3 paintbrush, and you might not be able to see the pencil lines as well as I can looking at them for the nose and the mouth and the eyes and the whiskers, but I can still see them. So that's all I'm doing is following along with those, making sure the nose is somewhat symmetrical. And once that dries, I'm going to go over the pink again, but I do the eyes and the whiskers only once because I actually didn't add that much water to the black paint well. And so it was a little bit thicker. It was kind of like a thick watercolor. I wouldn't say like liquid watercolor right out of the tube thick, but definitely not as diluted as I intended it to be. So it actually turned out pretty dark. And so I just left it as is. It didn't need a second layer. Since my hand is near the bottom right black splotch, I wanted to make sure it was dry. So I'm just going over that again, and then I will dry the face, I think, or I'm going to let it air dry. That is it, and I just wanted to show you the pillow in comparison to our painting. Super simple, but fun. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys for Freestyle Friday. Bye.